First of all, the two areas that affect most people today that are more difficult than ever before are marriage and parenting. They've totally changed, okay? It's a completely different paradigm. Let's start with parenting. There are three parenting models. Most of us come from what is called the authoritarian model. Now, the authoritarian model in parenting is very arbitrary. If you ask your parent, why do I have to do this? The answer is just because. Okay? They had an expression in Britain, children should be seen and not heard. That's a brutal approach to children. I once took a trip on an ocean liner to Australia. It was a British system. We had 6 sittings for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because the children all ate separately from the parents. It was brutal. Now, that authoritarian model, okay, the opposite of that is the permissive model. Now, the permissive model says let them do anything, okay, and we've had schools in Britain and around the world that tried this model where the kids were sliding down the banisters and they could curse and do anything they wanted to. The irony is, in both of those models, the extremes, they end up the same place. There is no internalized discipline. Because in the authoritarian model, you only respond to the authority, the physical presence. I once taught in a school in Australia where the students, the teacher stepped outside the door to talk to me. I was going to take over, and the kids went nuts, okay, because she had left the room. That was an authoritarian model. Now, the other model that is a Baha'i model is called the authoritative model. Now, that model presumes a couple of things. Number one, from the earliest years, you teach your child virtues. Now, we in the developed world have a vast educational system, okay? Not perfect, but let's face it, our material education is good. We can study the sciences and the arts and everything else. The problem we have is that the spiritual education, for a whole bunch of reasons, some political, some because people don't want to be associated with a particular religion, they don't want indoctrination, etc., that's where we get the problem. And that's why what you see in the world today is online bullying in the schoolyard, students are out of control. In addition to this, there are a number of factors, and this is where it's vastly different from before. My grandparents didn't have the money, didn't have the time, and certainly didn't have the freedom that children have today. Most kids today at the age of 11 and 12 have a cell phone, okay? They are bombarded by advertisements. If you sell toys on the internet and you advertise, your ad is based on what they call the nag syndrome. You're actually getting the kids to nag the parents to buy this cereal, that toy, okay? So everything has changed, okay? The landscape has totally changed. You have cosmetics, part of the cosmetics industry, worth about $3 billion, is aimed at girls age 9. There is a television show called Toddlers and Tiaras or something like this, where they're all dressing up with as models. This is obscene. This is totally depriving these children of an innocence that they have a right to, okay, to be free of this kind of manipulation, and that's exactly what it is. Now, in the authoritative model, the children are subject to the direction of the parents. Let's not pretend that they're all equal. They're not, okay? But the child has certain rights. They have a right, okay, to nurturing. And here's where I'm going to bring in a study that was conducted on how do you raise resilient children. Resilience is the ability to meet challenges in life. You'll notice, for example, there are some adults that can go through horrendous circumstances, traumas even, and they can not only survive, they can grow through it. Others, they just fold like a cheap suit. They just collapse, okay? And the reason is they don't have resilience. Now, the way to raise children with resilience is, from a Baha'i perspective, the quote is to condition them to hardship. Now, that's not harm. It's not abuse. It means challenge. You do not give a child everything he or she wants. You should not buy a 12-year-old an Xbox with the most violent games of chopping off heads. This is gross. But the culture, remember, celebrates violence. You have people making millions of dollars and television viewers paying $60 to $70 to watch two men bloody each other in a ring. Okay? Is this a non-violent society? I question that sincerely. So what you do is you teach the children virtues. In the Baha'i writings, the first virtue you teach a child is courtesy. It's called the Prince of Virtues. Now courtesy, and this is just my definition, is the recognition of the dignity of the other person. Okay? So when you teach them courtesy, you are giving them a preliminary to the concept of service, that we are here to care for each other. There's a big battle going on in the world now, and it's also in politics, as to what is the philosophy of freedom. Okay? Some of them would say it's individualism. Just me, myself, and I, which is a kind of a dog-to-eat-dog philosophy. It comes from a philosophy started in the 19th century where this, Jeremy Bentham was his name, he said the supreme governing principles of human behavior are pain and pleasure. Now, excuse me, that's animals. Animals respond to that. Surely we're better than that as human beings. Surely we can aspire to what Abdu'l-Baha, a central figure in the Baha'i Faith, says, that society functions on the principles of cooperation and reciprocity, which means that whatever I do will bounce back. Okay, it has a reciprocal effect on everyone. So from a Baha'i perspective, okay, you raise children to realize that they are part of a society. Yes, they have individual rights, but they also have responsibilities. If you look at, for example, in Canada we have the Charter of Rights. Notice the way it's put, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In the United States it's called the Bill of Rights. There's something wrong here. It's all on the side of rights. When there's a document from the Baha'i World Center that's called Individual Rights and Responsibilities. There's where we have both the balance, okay? Yes, we have rights. The rights to be treated equitably, fairly, with justice. But we also have responsibilities as part of a much larger human family. It's not simply our family, our biological family, our country. It's the world. We are all part of one human family. The second thing that parents need to do, it goes back to that British quote about children should be seen and not heard. No, children should be encouraged to express opinions. Doesn't mean you have to accept them, but you need to recognize that you cannot, if you, as a teacher, you didn't tell students they were wrong, why would you venture another answer, another opinion, if you're constantly put down by being told you're wrong? We have research that suggests that when you do that, you discourage interaction and involvement. What you do is you say, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Abdu'l-Baha used to use this approach. He used to say that's one way of looking at it. On the other hand, and he'd given an entirely different and far more enlightened opinion to some people who really thought they knew what they were talking about, and some of them have left records to that. So you encourage the expression of opinions, of the feelings, of ideas. It's called consultation. Because the world now and the world of the future is more and more leaving behind the adversarial model, which is government opposition, my way or the highway if you want, and going to a position which is you don't have a fixed position, because if you're really interested in discovering truth, don't go into an argument or a discussion with a fixed position. It means you're not really open. Okay, I come from a debating background. It's the first thing I had to learn or unlearn as a Baha'i, and I did it quite simply by recognizing that the purpose of debate is to win. It's not to discover truth. We give awards to people, okay, who hammered the other side, okay? That's not the way to resolve problems, because there are many facets to truth. It's like a diamond, and we can have a discussion where I can accept that you've seen something I didn't see. And what we end up is not compromise, by the way. The Baha'i consultation does not involve compromise. It involves like a vortex of a higher level of understanding. Because the purpose of consultation, as Abdu'l-Baha said, is the discovery of truth. We need to introduce children to that. So on the one hand, they need to understand they're subject to the direction of parents, okay? But they also have to be able to investigate. They have to be open to discovery. They have to be conditioned to hardship. And that means you let them face the inevitable challenges that life will present to them. The second thing is, some parents have a hard time moving with the children. And what I mean by that is, they try to apply the same discipline at the age of 12 that they did at the age of 8. It doesn't work that way. Everything progresses, and you have to be able to adjust, okay, according to what we call in education, the adaptive range of the child. Children are capable of understanding more about the rules as they grow older. Now, they shouldn't have to understand the rule before they obey it, but they should have an opportunity to understand it. And as a matter of fact, the way that true religious, revealed religions operate is the same as the scientific method, which is experiential. In science, you go into a lab and you test a theory. In religion, you obey the teaching. You don't try to understand it first, because you don't know it. You obey it first, and then you'll come to understand it. Okay? So obedience, as they say in Islam, precedes submission.